Coming up in a newscast, President Yoon orders truckers in the cement industry to return to work, vowing there will be no compromise in dealing with the truck driver strike. However, the unionized truckers announced they're not backing down. It's been a month since the deadly Itaewon crowd crush. Related investigations are ongoing and a safety overhaul is carried out. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo delivered a presentation to the World Expo's governing body. He highlighted the country's vision to host the 2030 global event.
Hello and welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with our top story. The government takes a hardline approach on the nationwide cargo truckers strike. President Yoon issued an executive order requiring the drivers to return to work as it calls the walkout illegal. Kim Bo-kyung starts us off.
In response to the ongoing strike by truck drivers, President Yoon has issued an executive order requiring truckers in the cement industry to get back to work to prevent further damage to the economy. In Tuesday's cabinet meeting, he said that there is no legitimate reason for the Cargo Truckers Solidarity Union to hold the national economy hostage for personal gain.
정부는 오늘 우리 민생과 국가 경제에 초래될 더 심각한 위기를 막기 위해 부득이 시멘트 분야의 운송 거부자에 대해 업무 개시 명령을 발동합니다. 경제는 한번 멈추면 돌이키기 어렵고 다시 궤도에 올리는 데는 많은 희생과 비용이 따릅니다.
In dealing with labor issues, President Yoon pledged to follow the Constitution, insisting he won't negotiate over behavior that is illegal. According to the presidential spokesperson, Yoon also added that if truckers continue to request what is without proper justification, the government will deal with the issue sternly using all possible measures. The cement industry is the first to receive the order, as the government deemed the sector the most in need of logistical operations returning to normal. The order is based on Article 14 of the Trucking Transport Business Act, which was introduced in 2004. After cabinet meeting approval, the land minister needs to report to National Assembly why the order was issued. This is reportedly scheduled to happen as early as Wednesday, but National Assembly doesn't have the power to reject the issuance of an order, as this would be the president's authority. The transport minister began delivering the order to around 2,500 cement truckers on Tuesday afternoon. After the notice is delivered to drivers, they need to have returned to work before midnight the following day. The minister said those who try to avoid receiving the notice would face not only a criminal penalty, but more severe punishments, and those who violate without reasonable cause could face up to 3 years in prison and a roughly $22,000 fine.
Invoking an executive order to return to work is not to punish the drivers and operators. It is an inevitable measure to restore the national logistics system and minimize damage to the national economy by having cargo transportation drivers return to work.
The land minister added the government will do its best to normalize the cargo transportation system. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Staying with the ongoing strike, the government urges truckers to stop, warning those who refuse will be dealt with strictly in accordance with the law. However, the union vows to continue the protest. Ji-young brings the updates.
The South Korean government has warned that any illegalities by striking truckers will be dealt with strictly and according to law and principles. Following President Yoon Suk-yeol's executive order, related ministries on Tuesday held a joint briefing on the nationwide cargo truckers' strike over guaranteed wages. Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho denounced them, saying, despite the ongoing economic crisis, cargo truckers are taking the country's economy hostage and shaking its industrial foundation just for their own interests.
Due to the strike, which started last Thursday, cement deliveries have dropped by more than 90% and ready-mixed concrete construction has stopped at more than 50% of construction sites. Also, gas stations are struggling due to inventory shortages.
He urged cargo drivers who grounded their trucks to immediately return to work. If they refuse, he warned that they'll be suspended, disqualified, and could face up to 3 years in prison or a fine of up to $23,000. However, the Cargo Trucker Solidarity, affiliated with the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions and related civic groups, said they'll continue to protest for minimum freight rates to be made permanent to improve their working conditions.
The safe trucking freight rate system to prevent dangerous driving only applies to 6% of all cargo truck drivers. Those who are not under the system run the risk of having to work long hours and falling asleep at the wheel.
The strike talks between the government and the truckers ended without any headway on Monday, but both parties are set to have another meeting on Wednesday. 엄지영, Arirang News.
A month has passed since the deadly crowd crush in Itaewon. Investigations are still underway, while discussions are set to begin on compensation for the victims' families. Lee Young-un gets us up to speed with the developments.
The police lines have now been lifted in Itaewon, but barely anyone can be seen in the Seoul neighborhood where 158 people died in tragic crowd crush 1 month ago. On the streets and the walls, only the notes, flowers, and other mementos left by mourners. The steep, narrow alley where the crowd crush occurred, only wide enough for 4 or 5 people abreast, had been made even narrower by an illegally extended terrace built by the Hamilton Hotel, a local landmark. That's now finally been pulled down. But many questions still remain. Was the Itaewon crowd crush avoidable? Who should be held accountable? The families of the victims are demanding the truth.
I, as a mother, and our family deserve to know why my son had to die. I ask for a thorough investigation so that no son or daughter on earth has to be victimized by such a tragedy ever again.
A special police investigation unit has been looking into senior officials at the local police and fire stations, the district office in Yongsan-gu, and the Seoul Police Agency on suspicions of negligence and manslaughter. There's also the alleged deletion of an internal report that had brought up concerns about crowd safety at Halloween. With police set to wrap up the questioning of key suspects by Tuesday, some arrest warrants could be issued as early as this week. In the meantime, the National Assembly is also carrying out its own probe, one that's not legally binding. Parliamentary hearings and on-site inspections will look into higher organizations like the Interior and Safety Ministry, the PM's office, and some associated with the presidential office. These will begin as soon as next year's budget is passed, the deadline being December 2nd if there's no delay. President Yoon Suk-yeol says finding the exact cause of the accident is the first step to determining the scope of compensation, meaning there could be further discussions on that issue once the preliminary investigations are out. Young-un, Arirang News.
Small businesses in Itaewon are still reeling from the impact of the tragic incident, which is why the government is offering financial support with low-interest loans to keep them afloat. Panmunjom sheds light on the measures.
It's been a month since the Itaewon incident on October 29th, and business owners in the area are still suffering.
There are only half as many people now. It's just people who live here that you see around. You don't see people come here to hang out or go on dates.
Things are not looking good. Ever since the outbreak of COVID-19, it's been like this.
The Seoul Metropolitan Government said sales in the Itaewon area have been cut by more than half since the incident. Sales in Itaewon Ildong fell by around 61%, with foot traffic in the area dropping by 30%. Itaewon Idong saw a drop of 20% in sales. The government has declared Yongsan District, where Itaewon is located, as a special disaster area. It says it will provide economic support to business owners that have been affected. They will be able to receive emergency funds of up to 70 million won, or around $53,000. Interest rates will also be cut from 2% to 1.5%. The loan maturity date is also extended from the current 5 to 7 years. Small and medium-sized businesses in Itaewon with a damage confirmation certificate will be able to get loans of up to 200 million won, or around $150,000 from the bank. The government says it hopes the financial aid can be of some help to Itaewon business owners who are struggling. Choi Min-dang, Arirang News.
South Korea's Prime Minister delivered a presentation to the World Expo's governing body to help with the country's bid to host a global event. At the BIE, Han Duck-soo stressed Busan is the ideal place to gather and address common challenges under the theme Transforming Our World, Navigating Toward a Better Future.
The World Expo 2030 Busan will present a new kind of expo, a sustainable platform for all humanity to resolve our shared challenges together. Korea's journey has already begun. We hope you will join us on this journey in Busan 2030 and beyond.
During his trip to Paris, the PM plans to meet with BIE members of Europe and Africa to seek support in Seoul's bid. The competition includes Italy, Saudi Arabia, and Ukraine. The winner will be announced next November. Turning our attention to the World Cup now, South Korea made some highlight reels with spectacular goals but came up short against Ghana. With that 3-2 loss, the Taeguk Warriors must push themselves to take down Portugal to make it to the Sweet 16. Kim Jong-soo brings the highlights and more.
The Taeguk Warriors had a strong start to the game, until 24 minutes in when against a run of play, Ghana's defender Mohamed Salisu put in the first goal of the match. And 10 minutes later, midfielder Mohamed Kudus scored another goal for Ghana, putting South Korea 2 goals behind at halftime. South Korea came back strong in the second half, and 13 minutes in, substitute Lee Gang-in crossed the ball to Cho Kyu-sung, who scored South Korea's first goal of the game. And just 3 minutes later, Cho scored another goal, bringing the match to a tie. That goal makes Cho Kyu-sung the first South Korean to score twice in a single World Cup match. But Ghana retook the lead with another Mohamed Kudus goal midway through the second half. South Korea had wave after wave of attacks but could not find another goal, and the match finished with Ghana winning 3-2. After the final whistle, South Korean head coach Paolu Bentu ran onto the pitch and strongly protested to the referee for ending the match without giving his team a chance for a final corner kick. The referee showed Bentu a red card. And because of that card, the head coach won't have the chance to sit pitchside during the final match against Portugal. On the same day, Portugal, South Korea's final opponent, beat Uruguay 2-0 to nail down its position in the round of 16. Portugal's midfielder Bruno Fernandes scored both goals. The only way for South Korea to move to the round of 16 is to beat Portugal in the upcoming final match and hope for a favorable result in the match between Uruguay and Ghana. The final match for the Taeguk Warriors will take place this Friday, local time. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, Seoul's unification minister visited Panmunjom and reiterated the government's willingness to engage in talks with North Korea. The official emphasized that the main obstacle to overcome is the lack of trust. Han Sung-woo shares with us his remarks.
The inter-Korean truce village of Panmunjom, the most symbolic remnant of the Korean War, a divided peninsula, and nearly 70 years of diplomatic efforts to achieve peace. On Tuesday, South Korea's unification minister Kwon Young-se made his first trip to Panmunjom since taking office. And there, after a guided tour provided by United Nations Command, reiterated in a mini briefing that the main reason for the vicious cycle of worsening inter-Korean ties is the lack of trust between the two Koreas.
The South Korean government harbors no hostility towards North Korea, and like past administrations, we are not pursuing unification by absorption. What's most important is to consistently work towards developing inter-Korean relations in a sustainable manner and bring to fruition a denuclearized Korean peninsula of peace and prosperity.
Kwon pledged to spare no effort in transforming Panmunjom from a symbol of division and tension into one of connection and collaboration, saying he hopes his visit leads to an improvement in ties. The minister asked once again that the North refrain from escalating tensions, return to dialogue, and begin negotiations for the Yoon Suk-yeol administration's so-called audacious initiative of drastically improving the North's economy and diplomatic situation in exchange for real steps toward denuclearization.
North Korea should no longer distort our government's sincerity towards developing bilateral relations and achieving peace on the peninsula. I look forward to a positive response to our proposal so that we can come face to face with each other and discuss inter-Korean affairs right here at Panmunjom.
Kwon Young-se's Panmunjom visit comes less than 2 weeks after North Korea fired an intercontinental ballistic missile toward the East Sea, its second such launch, just this month. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
North Korea's recent provocative rhetoric even included insults to the South Korean president by name. Some experts believe this is a sign efforts by Seoul and Washington to deal with the regime are working. Kim Da-mi tells us more.
Seoul and Washington are moving in the right direction when it comes to dealing with North Korea-related issues. That's according to South Korea's ambassador to the U.S., Jo Tae-yong, who on Monday stressed that the regime's recent spiky rhetoric against the allies proves the effectiveness of their joint efforts.
North Korea's sharp reaction, shown through Kim Yo-jong's statements, is evidence that progress is being made through the efforts of South Korea and the U.S.
The North Korean leader's sister Kim Yo-jong last week lambasted the Yoon administration for pursuing independent sanctions against the North. Meanwhile, Pyongyang has launched a total of 63 missiles so far this year alone. According to Jo, cooperation between South Korea and the U.S. is skin-tight, and they're speeding up efforts to boost their extended deterrence through joint military drills as well as through security consultative meetings. The latest collaboration sees the allies also tackling indiscriminate cyber attacks by the North.
South Korea and the US are stepping up efforts to block the North's various illicit activities in cyberspace to finance its nuclear and missile programs.
Jo then made sure to note efforts to bring the regime back to denuclearization talks still remain top of the agenda, pointing to Seoul's so-called audacious initiative. Regarding the U.S.-led Inflation Reduction Act, the Korean diplomat said his country has proposed plans to resolve the discriminatory elements in the bill to the U.S. Treasury Department through its opinion-collecting process. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
The world is closely watching the developments in China. Demonstrations erupted across the country with protesters demanding freedom from zero-COVID policies, as well as the Communist Party's tightening grip over all aspects of life. Chung Eun-ju has the latest.
Thousands of people in China over the weekend demanded greater democracy and freedom from the country's increasingly costly zero-COVID policy. As the numbers swelled at demonstrations in multiple major cities, protesters have also called for the removal of Chinese leader Xi Jinping, who has overseen a strategy of lockdowns, mass testing, and digital tracking against COVID-19 for 3 years. The Biden administration reacted cautiously on Monday to the Chinese citizens' protests.
We're watching this closely, as you might expect we would. And again, we continue to stand up and support the right of peaceful protest.
The White House's expressions of support for the protesters come as U.S. President Joe Biden is trying to ease tensions with Beijing. UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly also told reporters the Chinese government should listen to the voices of its own people, while Britain's Prime Minister criticized the government's arrest of a BBC journalist. The United Nations on Monday also echoed these sentiments as they urged Chinese authorities to guarantee people's right to demonstrate peacefully. The protests were triggered by a deadly fire last Thursday in Urumqi, Xinjiang that killed 10 people. Demonstrations that started in Urumqi spread to cities across China, including Beijing, Shanghai, and Wuhan. Protesters held up blank sheets of white paper, a symbolic protest against censorship, and chanted for human rights and freedom. Some also shouted against dictatorship and sang the Internationale, a socialist anthem that was sung during pro-democracy protests in Beijing's Tiananmen Square in 1989. The Chinese government quickly moved to suppress the protests by deploying police forces and tightening online censorship. While demonstrations in many parts appear to have been dispersed peacefully, there have also been reports of people meeting stronger responses from authorities. 정은주, Arirang News.
Over in Ukraine, intense shelling continues around Bakhmut in the Donetsk region. Fighting there reportedly descended into bloody trench warfare. According to Ukraine's top office on Monday, at least 4 civilians were killed and 11 others wounded in the latest Russian attacks. Meanwhile, this week, NATO foreign ministers are set to hold talks in Bucharest to discuss more support for Ukraine. Shifting our focus to a different story now, South Korea's growing elderly population requires big changes, from welfare services to government employment schemes. Shin Yeon zooms in on how more private companies are hiring seniors and trying to meet their demands.
With a longer life expectancy and lower birth rate, more of South Korea's population are becoming seniors. Unlike how they might have been perceived in the past, most of today's senior citizens are considered not only more healthy, but also more motivated to try new things. In other words, silver is becoming the new gold. Companies have become aware of this and are responding accordingly. This IT company called Arirang has a unique hiring policy. The average age of staff here is 60, and their retirement age has been set for 100 years old. The company's founder said he wanted to change the country's ageist corporate culture that pushes most people into retirement as early as in their 50s.
After 10 years running this business, I realized employment is the best medicine for the elderly. People would think because they're seniors, they'd be easily exhausted from work. But no, seniors become healthier both mentally and physically because they feel productive and interact with others at the office.
Employees here are trained to monitor and block sensitive content on the country's biggest web portal, Naver. It helps if you already have some expertise in this field.
I'm proud to be working and not wasting time at home. I feel needed because I use my professional knowledge and expertise from my previous job at an IT company.
There has been growing demand for the official retirement age in Korea to be pushed back. With the average life expectancy being around 83 years old, most seniors could end up spending 20 years at home jobless and without a hobby. Recognizing this, a few university students launched a travel agency called For Parents. Like a regular travel agency, senior customers can choose a range of vacation deals. The biggest difference is that a so-called buddy is matched with them. To become a buddy, you either have to be a certified nursing assistant or a student who has majored in social welfare.
Roughly 8 out of 10 seniors have nothing to do. They don't have friends, they don't have hobbies, they don't know what their options are, which directly correlates to why South Korea has such a high senior suicide rate. Our company aims to inform people that just because you're a senior, it doesn't mean you don't have needs. Seniors also want to have fun, travel, and make memories.
Before we transition into a super-aged society, we need to recognize that seniors aren't just vulnerable people we need to take care of, but people with needs and dreams of their own.
열심히 보람 있게 살려고 노력해요.
농업에 관련 일을 좀 공부를 좀 하고 싶어요. 그건 개인적인 바람입니다.
그 농경 생활에 에세이 같은 거, 뭐 수필 같은 거, 글 같은 거를 좀 남기고 싶어요.
신윤, Arirang News.
Brace yourselves for some extremely cold temperatures tomorrow. Wintry conditions will be seen for the next couple of days, with the capital region seeing readings in the minus range. Mornings will be especially cold at -7 degrees, but temperatures will feel close to -13 due to frigid wind chills. And with temperatures plummeting drastically, cold wave alerts will be issued across most parts of the country. As of 6 a.m. tomorrow, most inland regions will have warnings in place. And parts of the west coast will see a mix of sleet and snowfall. For the coastlines of Chungcheongnam-do and Jeollanam-do provinces, expect about 1 to 3 centimeters. Parts of Jeollabuk-do province and mountainous regions of Jeju Island will see up to 7 centimeters. Morning lows in Seoul will be starting off at -7 degrees and Chuncheon at -10 degrees. Daily highs in Seoul will get up to -3. Daejeon and Gwangju 1 degree. Busan will be reaching 5 degrees Celsius. Until Thursday, temperatures will continue to stay in the minus range. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.
A global network representing Korea. Arirang TV. Introducing the unique